Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the 214 215 podcast. I am Zekrom.
And I am salty.
So, obviously, it has been a long time since our last episode. There were certain circumstances that did not allow us to record for the past few months. But now we are back.
Yep, I got
With the
dragged
season
back
concluding last.
to the recording, kicking and screaming. I did not want to do another episode.
Yeah, I had to get Salty to look over the contract we signed before
Uh-huh.
we started this. It
Yeah.
said, like, they have to do this for, like, the next 10 years.
Mhm.
Unfortunate for them, but what can you do? So, now with the season concluding last Sunday, we won't be doing weekly episodes as there's not that much going on during the NFL offseason other than free agency and the draft, but we will be doing episodes before and after significant offseason events such as free agency and the draft. Now, with all that out the way, this episode will cover coaching hires our teams have made and what our ideal, mostly realistic free agencies would look like. Salty, you want to take it away with the Eagles?
I guess, man. The the Eagles concluded a highly disappointing season where they lost to the San Francisco Niners in the wild card. Something anyone who had been watching this team the whole season could have predicted happening. And after that, they finally fired football terrorist Kevin Patullo. Sadly, they did not do the same for Nick Sirianni, so we still got him around. But we got a new OC, Sean Mannion, former quarterback, like literally just like 3 years ago, I think he was on the team. But he was a Packers offensive assistant in 2024 and their quarterbacks coach in 2025. He has zero play calling experience, but he has been around like a bunch of well respected and well regarded offensive minds when he was a quarterback, and then for the few years he was in Green Bay with Matt LaFleur. So the hope is that with this inexperienced like play caller, like it's like a high risk, high reward um hire. In my opinion, it's actually zero risk, high reward hiring, because if it goes wrong, Nick Sirianni's going to be fired, and if it goes well, the Eagles will be good. So like, really, is there even a lose lose situation here for the Sean Mannion hire? But yeah, so the offense is likely to be a lot of like under center, running, zone, outside zone, a lot of under center play action, which we haven't seen the Eagles or Hurts do much of at all. Like, it was sprinkled in a few times, but it wasn't like the main focal point of the offense ever. So that'll be extremely interesting to see if Jalen Hurts is A, capable of doing that, and B, if like that's actually what we end up doing, because that's what his background would say. But also, as it's been said before, the offense is going to look how Jalen Hurts wants the offense to look. So you never know. Maybe it'll just be the same old like RPO, shotgun, and everything like that. It'll also be super interesting to see with Jalen Hurts, especially the lack thereof of um, quarterback runs that there were last season. He ran the fewest he's ever rushed in any season as the Eagles quarterback. So it'll be really interesting to see how that's incorporated, or if that's just no longer going to be part of his game, which would be very detrimental, because that was like a large part of his value as a quarterback. Because no offense, he's not like a Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes type passer. A lot of his value came from what he was able to create in the running game, which he was very, very good at, and also supplementing that with average to slightly above average passing that allowed for a functional offense to obviously be capable of even winning a Super Bowl. Um, this hire, though, has also led to the departure of Jeff Stoutland, who was the longest tenured Eagles coach. He'd been around here since Chip Kelly got hired. He'd survived Kelly's firing and also the firing of Doug Peterson after that. And apparently he got demoted from. Well, he didn't get demoted, but he wasn't like asked about um running game duties when Nick Sirianni, like midway through the season, started getting more involved in the offense. Him and Kevin Patullo just started getting more involved and kept Jeff Stoutland out, and he felt disrespected by that, causing him to decide to leave the organization despite the Eagles wanting him back. So obviously that's a massive, massive hole that now needs to be replaced on the Eagles coaching staff because Jeff Stoutland is uh, most likely the best offensive line coach in the NFL. He's extremely well respected across the entire league. Like immediately after he was let go, I saw like tons and tons of posts of like basically every single fan base pleading for their team to get Jeff Stoutland as their O line coach. Um, and also, and related to the O line, there's like a lot of uncertainty even with the players. Lane Johnson is getting up there in age, and he's been basically he's become the new Jason Kelsey, where he's basically contemplating retirement every single season now at this point. So maybe his only O line coach for his entire career on the Eagles has been Jeff Stoutland. So it'll be interesting if that like influences his decision to stay or go. And then there's also Landon Dickerson, who had a ton of medical concerns coming out of the draft a few years back, which is basically the only reason he fell to the second round because he in college he tore his ACLs 3 times, and I believe he had another knee injury. So it's just like a matter of time until his body fell apart. And there was a lot of reporting of him having said after the season of how like terrible he felt. Like this is the worst he's ever felt. Like playing a season, how miserable it was. And there's been a lot of rumors circulating that he might retire um, following this season. This season, he might just retire. So there's a lot of uncertainty with that. There's uncertainty with the O line coach, and the Eagles today apparently hired a new O line coach in Chris Cooper, who was the Vikings O line coach the last few seasons. The Vikings O line, at least statistically, I haven't watched every single Vikings game to let you know if this is real or not. Was pretty mediocre to bad, so that doesn't bode the best for how good of an O line coach he is. But also like the Eagles, it might have just been at the end of the day, like the Eagles still have talent. I don't think the O linemen on the Eagles are going to suddenly forget how to play football just because they have a new O line coach. And I think that might affect the development for newer O linemen if they, um, for example, lose Landon Dickerson and Lane Johnson, and then they draft a few rookies. That might be heavily detrimental to how they are coached and developed in the organization compared to before when they had Jeff Stoutland, and it was like pretty much guaranteed whatever happened, the Eagles would have like a good O line before this season. So it's not exactly been the greatest offseason for the Eagles. A lot of changes, a lot of drama, a lot of uncertainty about the direction of the team. There's been some reporting about how like bad the vibes seemingly have been in the Eagles organization. Apparently Nick Sirianni is on an um, what is it? A bigger hot seat. Like his seat is hotter than it was even after the 2023 season and the beginning of 2024, which is a pretty big indictment of how like terrible the Kevin Patullo experiment went, and the fact that Sirianni seemingly alienated the most respected and longest tenured coach on the Eagles, so much so that it ended up getting him fired, which really speaks pretty badly to him supposedly being a vibes guy, because it's not like he does anything for the offense, and obviously he does nothing for the defense. I think Vic Fangio would like kill him if he ever tried to say anything on the defense. So if he's not doing anything for the offense and he does nothing for the defense, and apparently he's ruined the vibes so badly on the Eagles last season. Jeff Statland said, "I'm out. I'm good. Thank you though." Um, it's really just a question of like what exactly does he do? And obviously, it's kind of hard to justify firing a head coach one season immediately after winning the Super Bowl, but I've never been that much of a Nick Sirianni guy. I've always thought he's just been carried by the talent. I think you could like plug me in as head coach, and some of these Eagles teams could could have winning records, you know. But because but I don't know. I don't know. It's been a very uncertain season. It's exciting to have at least a kind of a question mark at OC. He has a good background, but he has zero play calling experience, so you don't know how that's gonna go. It's gonna be his offense, not Sirianni's. He's bringing in his own coaches. They brought in the previous OC from the Bucks, Josh Grizzard, to be the passing game coordinator. So it's no longer like any Sirianni influence because when Kellen Moore was the OC in 2024, Kevin Patullo was the passing game coordinator, so there's still the Nick Sirianni connections. Now it's just going to be completely a new offense with zero Nick Sirianni influence, hopefully. So that'll be very interesting to see because it's going to be a very different looking offense, at least on paper, to what the Eagles have done basically throughout the entire Sirianni Hurts era. It might be just become a purely under center team with play action passes compared to before we just lived in shotgun running and passing. So yeah, that's the Eagles coaching and like general offseason outlook.
All right. Thank you. That was very insightful, Salty. So with the Cowboys, they made a couple of notable additions or notable hires on the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, last season the Cowboys defense was among the worst in the league. They were bottom five in points, yards, basically anything that talks about how good a defense is. They were at the bottom of it. We fired Matt Eberflus, who obviously you have to do that when you have a defense that badly, making it making our next hire would be our fourth defensive coordinator in the past 4 years. We ended up settling is kind of like the wrong word to do that. We ended up hiring Christian Parker, who came from Philadelphia. He worked under Fangio in Denver and Philadelphia, and he's been a really popular name, at least in coaching circles, the last couple of years. Ian Rappaport recently came out and said that he talked to him a couple of years ago, and he instantly knew that he was going to be someone who we were talking about as a hot defensive coordinator candidate throughout the NFL. And an interesting note that I heard, a tweet was put out by Cowboys insider Nick Harris and talked about how Fangio in Miami, he didn't have Christian Parker. And there were some talkings that he wasn't able to really bridge the system because Christian Parker wasn't there. And so Christian Parker, he worked as a cornerbacks coach. And some notable players who developed under Parker were Patrick Surtain, Cooper DeJean, and Quinion Mitchell. So those are some really good names. Patrick Surtain is maybe the best cornerback in the NFL. Quinion Mitchell, probably top five, top three. Cooper DeJean is one of the best nickels in the league. In Dallas, he'll be able to work with Deron Bland, who has had a pretty poor last 2 seasons. He's dealt with injury, and when he's played, he hasn't been that good. But he did earn a $90 million contract for a reason. So hopefully Parker will be able to help get him back up to that level or at least close to it. And Siobhan Revel Jr., who was our third round pick last year, who is really talented. He fell in the draft because of injury concerns, but hopefully under Parker he'll be able to develop and become a pretty good cornerback in the league. Some assistants we hired, I don't want to get too in depth with this because at the end of the day it is assistants. We were hired defensive line coach Marcus Dixon, who worked with Parker in Denver. In the last 2 seasons, he's been in Minnesota. Defensive pass game coordinator Derek Ainsley, who worked with the Packers as their pass game coordinator, who the Packers had the 11th ranked pass defense in 2025. So I think that's pretty good hire there. We got an outside linebackers coach from Georgia, Tadira Uzu Doribe. He's been under Kirby Smart in Georgia since 2022, and he's been again in coaching circles. He's been talked about as a fast rising person in that sphere. And cornerbacks coach, we hired Ryan Smith, who worked in Arizona last season. And this is kind of going into draft stuff, but he was cited. Uh, my bad. He was cited as a big reason Mansour Delane, an upcoming prospect in this NFL's draft, for initially committing to Virginia Tech. Mansour Delane has been connected to Dallas as an area that Dallas would like to improve on, being cornerback and being able to work with Ryan Smith, and then obviously Parker, who, as mentioned before, all of the cornerbacks that he's helped produce. I think that's a pretty notable detail about him. Now, the biggest takeaway I would look at look at the staff, if you look at it from like a wider angle, is that this is a big change of pace for the Cowboys. None of these hires are older than 41, which Marcus Dixon is 41. Everyone else is in their 30s. We have no former head coaches on this roster, and Jerry Jones mentioned that this is one of the first times that he hasn't really had like a head coach. Like our past couple of defensive coordinators, for example, have all been head coaches, such as Dan Quinn, Mike Zimmer, Matt Eberflus. They were all previous head coaches. So you can really tell that it was Brian Schottenheimer who was really running this whole show when it came to hiring. Honestly, I'm not even sure Jerry Jones even knew who Christian Parker was before Schottenheimer told him to hire him. But again, I think this is a pretty I don't I don't know exciting is the right word, but I think it's a positive development, I should say. It is a positive development in the way that the Cowboys are running things. That is all I have to say about the coaching staff. Salty went in and talked about the offseason, so I'll do that too. So there are a lot of things that the Cowboys can do. Currently, they have, I believe, negative 29 million in cap space, but there are a lot of things that they can do to free up a lot of cap space. Among these is post June 1st cutting Terrence Steele. Ever since he got his contract after he tore his ACL, which is in hindsight was a really bad move, he hasn't been that good. He's a good enough run blocker, but his pass blocking leaves a lot to be desired. I think that you can post string first cut him and live with that. Another that might be a little bit hard to swallow is cutting Kenny Clark. Obviously, you got him in the Micah Parsons trade, so cutting him a year after would look a little bit embarrassing. But while you're paying Osa Digizua 20 million and you already traded for Quinn Williams last in the trade deadline, it doesn't really make sense to carry a third defensive tackle who's earning 20 million, and that move would 20 million. You can cut him without any dead cap space. Next, you can restructure a lot of or not a lot of people, three people. You can restructure Dak Prescott, Tyler Smith, and CeeDee Lamb. All those moves I mentioned, cutting Terrence Steele and Kenny Clark and restructuring all those guys, frees 100 million in cap space, which when you factor in the negative cap space we currently have, would bring us to 70 million in salary cap space for the 2025-2026 offseason. Now, for our pending unrestricted free agents, we have 22 total, and honestly, I'd only really want three back. One of them is George Pickens. It is already being reported by Adam Schefter that the Cowboys will place the franchise tag on him. So, at the very least, assuming that for whatever reason something goes wrong, we will get something of value for him. I do think that he will get a contract. I refuse to believe Jerry Jones is that stupid. But you never know, especially considering that George Pickens has the same agent as Micah Parsons. But Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb have been very vocal about making sure that George Pickens stays. Dak Prescott, who is the biggest company man ever, has been very vocal in saying that if he has to get involved, he will. Next, the next player I would be interested in keeping is Javonte Williams. Now, I've I'm a firm believer that running backs are a very replaceable position. I do think that Javonte Williams has a lot of traits that make me want to keep him, specifically his run blocking, not his run blocking, his pass blocking. That the season he showed a lot of it being really well in that field. Obviously, he was a really good runner, and I think that if you pay him around like 8 million a year, I could live. If I would go as high as 8 million a year for Javante Williams. If you pay him like 10 million a year, I could maybe accept it. Probably around a 3-year deal. But I think if you ask for over 10 million a year, you should go into the draft and try and get someone there. And the last unrestricted free agent that I would like to have back is Jadeveon Clowney, who had a really strong second half of the season. He ended up basically skipping training camp before starting with us, so it is possible that he does that again. I would be more than happy to have him back considering how he played. So that was all the. So out of the 22 total unrestricted free agents, only three of them come back. And now we also have some restricted free agents, basically all depth players that would all be happy having back, such as Brock Hoffman and Tyler Bass. Though I do think that they might get bigger deals if they go somewhere else. One player that it has a bit of question marks around him is Brandon Aubrey. He is a restricted free agent, and from what I've heard, he is expected to have the second round tender put on him. Basically means that if someone offers him a contract in free agency, we can either match it, or if we decide to not match it, we get a second round pick because of it. I do think that re-signing Brandon Aubrey is very important. You can lose and win games because of kickers. We see it all the time, especially in the playoffs. Just take the Green Bay Packers for example. If Brandon McManus ended up costing them 7 points in a game where they obviously needed 7 points, it was the Packers only lost by one score. So I think that signing Brandon Aubrey, I don't think it's a huge concern. I don't think that it can be botched because even if someone offers him a contract, you can just match it. Now, looking at free agency, some realistic free agency targets that I would like to target are Nakobe Dean from the Philadelphia Eagles. He is one of the better. He is a really good inside linebacker, a position that we sorely need. We were running Kenneth Murray out there for 17 games, and that was just so bad. I think that the Kobe Dean paired up with hopefully more up to speed DeMarvin Overshown could be a really good linebacker tandem in the middle. Another linebacker I'd be interested in is Quincy Williams. I would be so shocked if we don't sign either Nakobe Dean or Quincy Williams. Quincy Williams especially because he is the brother of Quinn and Williams, and they obviously really enjoyed playing together. There were some stories that came out after Quinn Williams came out that Quincy Williams thought that Quinn Williams is still on the team, and he texted him before the game like, "Where are you on the team bus?" And Quinn Williams taking it back and he's like, "Oh, I'm in Dallas, man." Anyway, and the Cowboys have shown prior interest. I heard that there was a story that the Cowboys wanted Quinn Williams and Quincy Williams plus first round picks from Micah Parsons. So obviously the Cowboys have interest in Quincy Williams. So I'd be shocked if we don't get the Kobe Dean. Obviously, the Kobe Dean was when Philly with Christian Parker. If we don't get one of those two, I'd be pretty surprised and honestly really disappointed. Some other players I'd be interested in is Reed Blankenship. Obviously, he was with the Eagles last season too with Christian Parker. Obviously, he's a safety, and Christian Parker was a quarterbacks coach. But I think there's probably some overlap considering that they're both working in the secondary. Reed Blankenship's not exactly the best player, but considering we were running Donovan Wilson and then Marquise Bell out there, I think that it would be more than fine to have Reed Blankenship. I think that maybe he's mid, but mid would be a massive upgrade. Another name that I'm thinking of is Justin Simmons. Justin Simmons. He ended up sitting out 2025 after being with the Atlanta Falcons in 2024. Simmons was in Denver when Christian Parker was there, and he spoke very complimentary about him after Parker was hired. Obviously, he's 32, and skipping a whole year isn't exactly the best sign, but I wouldn't mind kicking the tires around him. And finally, I have some trade targets that maybe the Cowboys can pursue. One of them is Minka Fitzpatrick. I think Minka Fitzpatrick is like the ideal Cowboys target. He is a veteran player with solid pedigree with an expiring deal. He probably wouldn't be that expensive to acquire relative to his talent. And I mentioned Derek Ainsley, our new defensive pass game coordinator. He worked with him in when Minka Fitzpatrick was at Alabama. And if you were looking for a big splash trade that the Cowboys could maybe make, Max Crosby has mentioned that he is or it's been reported that he is very unhappy with the Raiders. Mike Florio claims that he told Tom Brady that Max Crosby told Tom Brady that he will never play for the Raiders again. I don't know how much I trust Mike Florio, but Max Crosby grew up in the DFW Metroplex, and the Cowboys do have an extra first round pick this year. So I'm not sure what a package for Max Crosby would look like. Maybe it would probably be maybe two first round picks. But if the Cowboys want to make a big splash move, I think Max Crosby could be that. And that is about all I have for the Cowboys coaching staff and their free agency. I think I talked for a long time. So Salty, you have any comments on anything I said?
Yeah, you just want the entire Eagles roster, huh? Reed
Yeah, I mean
Blankenship, Kobe Dean already took Christian Parker. Like biblical
the
greed.
consequences, the consequences of having a good roster, man.
That's so true. Can you imagine not doing anything with such an elite roster? Well, I
No
guess we did win.
comment.
We won one Super Bowl, but could have done more. It is what it is.
Oh, you getting elite talent and winning Super Bowl? Imagine that, huh?
Well, the Cowboys have never had an elite roster, so that's fine. Or
Oh yeah, that's
or maybe they have, and Dak Prescott just sucks so much he can't get carried by a team. Whichever agenda I'm rooting for on a given day.
I suppose, bro. um. So, do you have any free agency? You mentioned it before we were started recording that you don't really know who the people are gonna sign with the
Yeah,
You don't know like free agent.
the
Yeah, you
yeah,
can take it.
for the Eagles, it's just a problem of we don't have that much cap space, and we have a lot of players that need to be re-signed coming up. Like not this season. Well, like we can give Jalen Carter's extension eligible this season, but like after that, it's gonna be Quinion Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. Like it's so we don't really aren't gonna be. We're gonna probably be bargain bin spending again, like we did last season when like we signed the Dory Jackson and like just stuff signings like that because we don't really have the cap space flexibility to be big spenders in free agency this season. Most of our work is probably going to be through the draft or because we have a bunch of draft picks this season.
Right. One thing I also wanted to bring up. There's been a lot of talk about AJ Brown and then
Yeah.
potentially being traded. Do you have any thoughts on that? Do you think that he will get traded? Do you think that he'll stay? What do you think will
I
happen there?
think unfortunately he does get traded. I don't want him to get traded. Obviously, I know his play um quality dropped a bit this season. He was not as crisp of a route runner. He didn't get open as much. He had some drops, like in the game versus the Niners in the playoffs. He had some pretty rough drops that game. But regardless of that, he's still like one of the best wide receivers in the league, and you just want to keep those kind of players around. It's one down season. Um, and a lot of it could just been because he was so frustrated. Now this isn't a good thing, but it could have been just because he was so frustrated with the Eagles' offensive like approach and scheme that he just was quiet quitting essentially on the field. Which isn't a good thing. That's like a terrible look. That's not really professional, and like a player should never be doing that. Like if you have complaints about the team, just like do your best and show how it is the fault of the scheme and it's not you like dropping a easy completion. um but I think unfortunately he does get traded. I don't know to who. I don't know what the package will look like. I'm assuming we'd get like minimum a second. I don't think we'd get a first for him at this point because of the contract and everything, but a second, another mid-round pick, maybe. I hope he doesn't get traded, but I think he will ultimately, which would just like continue adding on to a pretty rough offseason for the Eagles so far.
All right. Yeah, that seems pretty. My only concern about well, not concern. I'd love AJ Brown to be traded. Let me be clear, but only concern about that. I don't know if the Eagles would get a huge return considering he has a lot of years left on his deal and he still has a lot of salary. So you're taking on like a multi-year commitment to this. So I'd be kind of like wondering, what the return would even be. What would
Mm-hmm.
a return that if the if AJ Brown got traded, what do you think the return would be?
I think, well, I haven't like looked into this too much, so but I think it'd be like a second minimum, right? Like you're getting a second for Adrian Brown, and then probably like another mid-round pick, or maybe it'll be like a second that can be conditionally turned into a first if like he hits certain like milestones. That's something that the Eagles really like doing, is getting conditional picks with like that can ramp up. So I think that's probably like the trade package looks like. Second, maybe a conditional second that can turn into a first, and another mid-round pick would probably be my assumption. I don't know if you think that's off base.
Well, I mean, we traded Amari Cooper for a fifth round pick, so I don't know what
Yeah,
would be
but
the
I don't
proper.
think Amari Cooper is was the player AJ Brown is, you know?
Nah, I agree. I'm just making like fun about how
Uh-huh.
stupid Jerry Jones can be sometimes. We
Yeah.
should have not even traded Amari Cooper, but that's a whole other thing I could go on about.
Yeah, the uh,
But
the
uh,
the uh, the big limiter also on trading AJ Brown would be that contract because the dead cap hit. I'm not like I don't know like the ins and outs of the cap space numbers, but I know
looking at
that
this,
his dead
oh
cap
my bad,
numbers
sorry.
would be pretty bad if he's traded. So that would also have to be worked into the trade. Like the other team probably would have to take some of his salary, like more than normal of his salary.
According to Spotrac, AJ Brown trading or cutting AJ, obviously not going to cut AJ Brown, but trading AJ Brown results in 72 million in dead cap space.
Yeah,
So
exactly. That's that, but that's probably also like the biggest reason. The biggest reason he would not get traded is because of that. But you never know. The
no.
cap is kind of fake sometimes. Like in trades, you can just like delegate how much each team gets and spread it out. You know.
All right. Well, that is pretty much all I had to say. Salty, is there anything you would like to say before we conclude this episode?
Yeah, the just some stuff with like what the Eagles are probably gonna do like cap space wise and like who they're gonna keep and retain. Like I for free agency, I don't think we're gonna make any major splash signings, but just for like bookkeeping and everything, Joan Carter is up for an extension, like I said previously, and Quinion Mitchell and Cooper DeJean are up for extensions next season. Um, Dallas Goddard has a $20 million dead cap hit if this season. So while it will seem pretty likely that he'd leave this season, the Eagles might actually it might be in their best interest to re-sign him to like a shorter contract to get rid of that dead cap hit and spread it out over some years because a $20 million cap hit would be pretty heavy on the books. So maybe they'll resign him, draft someone as well, which was really surprising that they didn't draft a tight end last season. They're most likely going to draft one this season. So it'll be interesting to see if they keep Dallas Goddard for let's give him a new contract just to lower that cap hit because that's pretty glaring. Michael Carter is also probably going to be cut. We traded for him from the Jets in the trade deadline. He didn't really do much for us, but he has an $8 million. We'd free up $8 million in cap if we cut him. Jalen Phillips is probably the only player aside from Dallas Goddard maybe getting like a fake extension to like lower his cap hit would be the one player that we would retain. He loved being here supposedly. He was like raving about being here and being reunited with Fangio. He was pretty good. He kind of faded a little bit after having a really good debut on the Eagles, but it probably be best if we re-signed him because we do have Nolan Smith and Jalex Hunt, who Jalex Hunt especially flashed a ton this season. He was very good. He led the Eagles in interceptions and sacks. He's amazing in this scheme. Nolan Smith was injured a bit, but he was also really good. But aside from him, those are the only two Eagles edge rushers that are like signed past this season. They're Aziz Ojulari, Joshua Uche, Brandon Graham, Jalen Phillips. They're all free agents. Brandon Graham might just retire again. I don't know if he's gonna play another season. Probably not, I'd assume, but who knows at this point. So it's probably in the best interest for the Eagles to re-sign Jalen Phillips. His market value probably isn't going to be like the highest. He's 15, 18 million. Probably should be enough to keep him, I'd assume, which is still pretty high, but it's not like top of the market value. That'd probably be the one player I try to re-sign. Nakobe Dean is 100% gone, sadly. We got Jahad Campbell and um, Zach Bond on the Eagles already, and we also have some like pretty good depth with Jeremiah Trotter. So just Nakobe Dean's just gone. Hopefully we net a good comp pick for him. Reed Blankenship is also interesting. I don't think he's gonna get like the biggest contract, so maybe he'll take like a slightly team friendly deal or just like his market just doesn't materialize as he thought he would, and he comes back. It'd be nice to have him back because the Eagles safety group isn't the best. Sidney Brown is a free agent, and Andrew Makuba also got injured and was like so for a lot of the season. It might have been like rookie pains, and Vic Fangio's scheme is a pretty hard one to figure out. But Marcus Epps, who we signed just off the street to our practice squad and then elevated to our roster, was pretty. It's a pretty big improvement on him. Not like that Marcus Epps was like an insane all pro level player, but just like he was more consistent than Andrew Makuba was. So our safety room isn't really looking the best. And again, it's not like Reed Blankenship is like the greatest safety ever, but it'd just be nice to have that hole on the roster at least somewhat fixed and only have to worry about possibly one safety spot instead of having to find two, especially if stuff comes up with our O line with like Landon Dickerson or Lane Johnson. God forbid they both retire. There'd be like massive gaps on the team that the Eagles would need to fix through the draft, and just not having to worry about safety would be very nice. So yeah, I don't think the Eagles are gonna have like the biggest free agency. Probably just gonna re-sign a player or two. Hopefully, I think they'll resign Phillips. Maybe not. Maybe they'll just let everyone walk and just like eat it because they do have like some massive extensions coming up with John Carter, who's probably going to be in like the 28 to $30 million per year range for a defensive tackle. Quinion Mitchell and Cooper DeJean both made All Pros this season. Like they're going to get top of the market deals. So this defense is going to start to get pretty expensive, and obviously with that you gotta make some cuts somewhere. So it'll be an interesting offseason for the Eagles to see like how they set themselves up for future seasons because they're not likely to do much this season except for like run it back with who they keep. But yeah,
Nice. That was incredibly insightful, Salty. Thank you very much. I don't know why I said it like that.
that's
All
fair.
right. So that's that's all we have for today. Thank you guys so much for if you made it to the end. Thank you guys so much for listening. Be sure to like, subscribe if you haven't, share with anybody who would be interested in this. And all right, that's it. So thank you so much for listening. Bye bye.
Bye bye.